Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem, Daf Gimel Amud Beis. Let us begin starting with Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, the last line on the Amud. Says the Gemara, My have Allah. The Gemara is now bringing back what we just stated before. We know when it comes to both the mavui, the kara, the crossbeam cannot be higher than 20 amos, as well as the schach of the sukkah can have a maximum height no higher than 20 amos. The Gemara had asked, what happens if you have miktsas mavui and miktsas above and miktsas below the esim amos? Or in the sukkah you have miktsas schach above and miktsas schach below the esim amos. Is that going to be kosher or puzzle? Rabbah said in the first lashon that a mavui would be kosher and a sukkah would be puzzle. Subsequently, the Gemara brought the exact opposite in the name of Rabbah, that he said the sukkah would be kosher and the mavui would be puzzle. Ask the Gemara, my havi Allah, what is the conclusion? What comes out from this? Rabbah bar Ula Omar, ze veze puzzle. Both this and that. That means both the case of the crossbeam in the mavui, as well as the case of the sukkah, the schach. If the mavui, the crossbeam, and the schach are miktsas above esimamo and miktsas below esimamo, they're both going to be possible. Rava Omar, Rava says, Zev is a kosher. They're both indeed kosher. Radaf Gimel Amud Beis at the very top. Chalal sukkatnan, chalal mavuitan, because the Mishnah is talking about the airspace of the sukkah. That's what's going to be possible if the schach is above 20 amos of airspace. Similarly, when it comes to the crossbeam, if there is 20 amos of airspace and then the crossbeam above that, that will be possible. I'll bring you a brisa to support what you're saying. It states that a mavui in this brisa that is greater, that is higher than esrim amma, greater than the entranceway of the heichal, you have to lower it. The heichal gufoi chalaloi asrim, and we know that the heichal's chalal was 20 amos. So over here we have a proof for what Rav Papa just had said, what Rava just had said, that indeed, since the airspace is going to be what's making it so that's invalid if it's above the airspace, but if you have the mavui, where the kara is slightly beneath the 20 amos, it's within 20 amos, then it'll be kosher. Ask the Gemara, Eisve Rav Simi bar Rav Ashi, the Rav Papa, he challenges what Rav Papa just proved for Rava. Keitzar haya oise. We have a brisa that says, how do I make the crossbeam on a mavui? Meniach kore misvas esim ulamata. Here it states the way to do that is to place the edge of the crossbeam 20 amos and lamata, mashma, beneath the top of esim amma. That means the entire crossbeam should be within 20 amos. So here we have a kasha on that which Rav Papa tried to prove for Rava, that indeed, if a miktsas is beneath esim amma, that's not good enough. It has to be the entire crossbeam. Answers the Gemara, Ema ulamala. Say that it means that lamala means to say that aside from the bottom part of the crossbeam, the rest could be above. So that's exactly what Rava said. Is partially is within 20 amos, it's kosher. Ask the Gemara, lamata kitani, but it teaches in this brisa lamata, and lamata implies the entire crossbeam has to be lamata. So therefore, if only miktsas is within the 20 amos, it's going to be possible. Answers the Gemara, hakamashman de lamata kilamala. No, it's not talking about the bottom of the crossbeam. It's talking about the bottom of the measurement that a crossbeam could be put. In other words, there's two different parameters. There's the height, the maximum height of the crossbeam, but there's also the minimum height of the crossbeam. The maximum height of the crossbeam is that it's within esrim amma. The minimum height of the crossbeam has to be at least eser tfachim. So therefore it says like this. Hakamash malan, the lamata kilamal. It's coming to teach us that the lamata down below, the minimum amount, has to be similar to the maximum amount. In what sense? In the sense that they both have to be a full halal. In other words, like this. Malamala chalala esrim. Just as above, it has to have a full halal of esrim to be poisel. If it's higher than that, it's going to be posel. But if any part of the crossbeam is beneath and within the esrim amma of the halal, it will be kosher. Af lamata chalala esara. So too, the lamata has to have a full halal. There, in this case, it's talking about to be kosher. To kosher the minimum size, the minimum height. The halal has to be a full asar tvachim, which above that is going to be posel. So it's going to be similar in the lamala to lamata. Lamata, just like the mala, in that the mala, we're saying has to be a halal. Only lamala, we're talking about that it's beyond that, it's going to be posel. Lamata is going to be kosher, but full has to be a full halal. Above, we're talking about esrim amma. Below, we're talking about asara tfachim. Says the Gemara, Vayter Omar Abaye Mishmid Rav Nachman. Now he's going to tell us that which we said in our Mishnah, that the crossman has to be 20 amos high. In other words, it can't be higher, just what you said, beyond the halal of 20 amos. What is exactly the definition of the amos that we are measuring? Says Rav Nachman the following. Amas sukkah va'amas mavui, ve'ama bas chamisha. The amma of the sukkah and the amma of the mavui, is measured as 5 tfachim. Amos kilaim, ba'ama bashisha. Whereas the amma of kilaim, of an admixture of a kerem, together with tavua or some other vegetation, together with that vine, is going to be planted, we measure 6 to the tvachim of an amma. In other words, Abaye is saying to Rav Nachman that we are going lechumra when it comes to measuring the amma. Sometimes, in certain places, we'll measure the amma as 5 tvachim, like in the case of mavui and sukkah, whereas other times we'll measure the amma to be machmir as 6 tvachim, like in the case of kerim, as follows. Amos mavui va'amos ba'ama bas chamisha lemay hilchas. The Gemara wants to know, in what way is the amma of the crossbeam going to be indeed lechumra? What law is it going to be lechumra? Explains the Gemara, legoivoy ulepirtzas mavui. In regard to the height of the mavui, when the crossbeam is set, we're measuring those amos that can't be beyond 20 amos, in that it should be a 5 tfachim amma. And therefore, since we're measuring it as being 5 tfachim amma, it comes out that it's going to have to be lower than the 6 tfachim amma. So we're going lechumra. Similarly, when it comes to the opening of the mavui, the opening of mavui, the Mishnah taught us it can't be beyond 10 amos, unless of course it has a tzuras haPesach, according to our Mishnah. But if it's beyond Eser amos, then it's considered to be mevatel the Pesach, and it's a pirza. How do we measure those 10 amos? So Abaye is saying the name of Nachman by measuring it as 5 tfachim. Again, it gives us a smaller measurement. We're going lechumra to say if it's beyond that width, it's going to be a pirza. Ask the Gemara of ha'ika meshech mavui ba'arba amos de lekula. But we know that the depth of the mavui has to be at least arba amos, and if you're going to measure it with 5 tfachim per amma, then it's going to be coming out a kula. Answers the Gemara, Kiman da omer be'arba tfachim. There's a machloikis at how much depth does this mavui have to be in order to then be able to make a tikkun like a cross beam. One opinion is, like we said before, arba amos, but there's another opinion that says arba tfachim. So Rav Nachman ascribes the opinion of arba tfachim. V'bois eimom be'arba amos. Or alternatively, you can say even he ascribes the opinion that says arba amos is the depth of the mavui. But the roiv amos ka'omar. He said, when he said his din that we're machmir in terms of measuring the amma, that's the majority of those amos of mavui. That means 2 out of the 3 will be machmir, and will measure it as 5 tfachim. The other one will measure as 6 tfachim. So it comes to the height and the width, in terms of the highest height that will posel the mavui, and the biggest width that will posel the mali, then we'll make it machmir by measuring the amma as 5 tfachim each. But when it regards to the depth, so then we'll measure it with 5 tfachim, that will become a lekula. But in the majority of the measurements, it comes out lechumra. Now the Gemara turns its attention to the sukkah. Amos sukkah be'ama bas chamisha l'mayich ilchasa. In what way was he saying that in regards to the amma of the sukkah, that it will become a chumrah? In what laws, in what halacha? Answers the Gemara, l'goiva u'ledoifen akum. In regards to the height, just like we said by the crossbeam and the mavui, in the height of the sukkah, if the schach is above esrim amma, like we explained before, beyond the chalal of esrim amma, so then it's going to be possible. How do we measure that goiva? Each amma is going to be 5 tfachim, so it will come out to be a lesser height. We'll go l'chumra. In addition to that, there's something called doifen akuma. Doifen akuma means the halacha Moshe Sinai. When it comes to sukkahs, the wall itself, we're saying that the sukkah wall doesn't have to be straight, and therefore, if there is a space between the schach kosher, and there's then schach posel between the schach kosher and the wall, if it's within daled amos, we can say dofin akuma. The wall of the sukkah curves and it connects to the schach posel as a part of the wall, and then it goes into the schach kosher. So if it's within daled amos, so then it's considered to be a valid wall. So therefore, how do we measure those amos? Each amma is 5 tfachim. So again, it's a lesser type of amount than if we would make it a 6 tfachim measurement. So we're going l'chumra. So those are the 2 ways where we see that the measurement is l'chumra, both into the goiva as well as the doifen akuma of the sukkah. Ask the Gemara, v'ha'ika meshech sukkah ba'arba amos de lekula. But we know that the measurement of the depth of the sukkah, the length, has to be dalid al dalid amos. And if you measure the amma with the measurement of 5 tfachim, so it'll come out of kula, because you're saying that the length, the depth can be even less. Answers the Gemara, the Tanya. So Gemara is still asking the question, bringing up right to the Tanya. Rabbi Oimer ani kol sukkah she'ein badalid amos al dalid amos psula. So we see that Rabbi holds that the length of the sukkah has to be dalid al dalid amos. So again, if you measure the amma as being 5 tfachim, it comes out that it's going to be dalid al dalid amos. It's going to be a smaller measurement, lekula. Answers the Gemara, kirabonon damri afilu eina. The Rabban hold that it has to be only zayin al zayin tfachim, and therefore we're not measuring amos according to this, and therefore the Rab Nachman's statement is not a kasha. Alternatively, however, la'olam Rebbe, you can say that Rab Nachman goes like the sheet of Rebbe, that the depth, the length of the sukkah has to be dalid al dalid amos. We asked, so that comes out to be a kula if you measure it with a bas 5 tfachim. Answers the Gemara, v'roiv amos ka'omar, because the majority of the amos that we're measuring for sukkah is l'chumra. So 2 out of the 3, namely the goiva and the doifen akuma, is going to be l'chumra, because we measure the amma from 5 tfachim, but it'll come out that the depth is going to be l'kula, because we measure it with 5 tfachim. Amas kilayim be'amo ba'shisha l'may hilchas. Now the Gemara turns its focus to the kilayim, which we said that there has a measurement of 6 tfachim to go l'chumra. Ask the Gemara, in what way is it going to be l'chumra? L'may hilchasa l'karachas hakerem v'limchol hakerem. In regard to a karachas hakerem, karachas hakerem is when you have a vineyard, and within the vineyard, the middle of the vineyard has a bald spot, just like a karachas, where there's not any vines that are planted there. They have been uprooted and it's bare over there. Or limchol hakerem, which refers to that which is adjacent to the geder, the fence around the vineyard. So here we're going to talk about this space that is necessary in regards to then being able to plant either from the karachas or the geder. This nan, it states in the Mishnah, karachas ha-kerem, this bold area of the kerem, Beis Shammai oimrim esrim ve'arba amos, uBeis Hillel oimrim sheish esrei amos. There's a machlokes, how much space do you need in order to make it a shir chashuv? In other words, if it's not a shir chashuv, and doesn't have the shir of a sodeh on each side, then that's going to be bottle to the kerem. So since you have, let's say, a kerem on two sides, so everybody agrees that you have to have at least 4 amos on each side of the kerem, because those 4 amos are for the avodah of the kerem. When the ox is plowing, he needs those 4 amos, and when the ox carries a carriage, the agola, that also requires those 4 amos. So that 4 amos next to the kerem is considered to be part of an extension of the kerem. So that's for sure, you need 4 amos on each side, that gives you 8 amos. Then you also have to have a measurement of a sodeh, but not just one sodeh, so there have to be one sodeh adjacent to each kerem. So it's really going to be, in this case, 2 sodos. So according to Beis Shammai, therefore, you need a total of 24 amos. If we take away the 8 amos that we said is necessary, so it's 4 amos on each side, that's going to be for the avodah of the kerem. So 24 minus the 8 gives you 16 amos. So it has to be a shir chosh of 16 amos, because a shir sodeh is 8 amos each, according to Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says 16 amos is sufficient. Again, you need the 4 amos on each side, but you take away the 8 amos, you're left with 8 amos. The shir sodeh is 4 amos, and therefore you have 2 sodos, 4 and 4. That's the shir chashuv, so that you then don't have that area to be bottled to the kerem. So here we see that we have measurements of amos, and how much are we going to then measure the amo? According to Rabbi's statement of Nachman, we're going to be lechumra by counting and measuring each amma as 6 tfachim. So let's say, according to Beis Hillel, that the 6 tfachim, if you need to have 8 amos of a shir chashuv, then it's 6 tfachim per amma, which will be a bigger space. That bigger space, therefore, is lechumra. Says the Gemara to explain further. That's in regards to the karachas. Umechol, the Mishnah states, umechol hakerem, in regard to that which is adjacent to the fence. Beis Shammai omrim sheish esrei amos, uBeis Hillel omrim shtei esrei amos. Here, the shir is slightly different. Here, we're talking about there's only a kerem on one side. The other side is the fence. So on one side of the kerem, towards the open space between the kerem and the geder, so you have to have 4 amos. Everybody agrees to that. Again, that's the makom of the avodah. Plus, you need also a 4 amos that is next to the geder, the fence, because you want that people should trod on that area, making it hard and being more beneficial to the kerem. So that's also out. So you already have 8 amos. So it's the shir that's in between that's going to be chashuv. So according to Beis Shammai, he says it has to be a total of 16 amos. So we take away the 8 amos, you're left with 8 amos because the shir of one sodeh. According to Beis Hillel, it's 12 amos, because again, we said you have 4 amos on either side. So 12 minus 8 rather, gives you 4. So then you have a shir chashuv of 4, the shir of a sodeh. So that's what the Mishnah states in terms of the mechol. The Mishnah goes on to say, Ezu karachas hakerem, defining what is karachas kerem, which we mentioned already. Kerem shechar be'emtzi yoso, when you have a kerem that has the middle part that is open. Ein shom sheish esrei amos, lo yavia zer l'shom. The Mishnah is just stating now the opinion of Beis Hillel is being so same like the shita of Beis Hillel, and saying when you don't have 16 amos, if you don't have at least a shear of 16 amos between the kerem and the kerem, that bald area, then lo yavi zer l'sham, you cannot plant, because there'll be a problem midrabanan of kilayim. Hayusham sheish esrei amma, but if you have 16 amos, again the opinion of Beis Hillel, then noisin lo kidei avodasoy. then give the shear that you need for the avodah, which is 4 amos on each side, and then plant the additional 8 amos in between. Now the Mishnah goes on to ask by the mechol hakerem, which we already explained. Lebein kerem legeder. That's the space between the vineyard and the geder and the fence. Ein shom shtei mesrei amo lo yovi zer l'sham. Again, the Mishnah is so same Kishita's base Hillel and says if you do not have a shear of 12 amos altogether, then you cannot plant there. Hayu shom shtei mesrei amos. Then noisin lokidei avodos v'zorei hashar. If you have a full 12 amos, so we said, then you have to take away 4 and 4 for the avoid and 4 that is adjacent to the fence, whereby you're left with 4 amos. That's the space that's shir choshev v'sodeh, and therefore you can plant over there. Ask the Gemara. In other words, so we just stated that if we're going to measure again, according to Beis Hillel, these amos, so then those amos, according to Rav Nachman, that each amma is a shear of 6 tfachim. We're making a chumrah because we're saying that the space has to be a bigger space in order to be able to plant and not having a problem with kilayim. Ask them where v'ha'ikas b'tzufim ba'arba amos dilekula. Okay, you've told me that there's a chumrah, but I'll show you that there's also a kula in regards to the 6 tfachim, because when you have rows of vines, and it states over here to have consecutive rows, you have to have 4 amos in between the rows. If you don't have at least 4 amos in between the rows, then it's not going to be valid as part of it. It can be considered to be a kerem, a vineyard. Otherwise, it's considered to be individual. What's the nafkamina? If it's a kerem, a vineyard, then you have to be marchik daled amos to plant. If it's not, if it's within arba amos, it's not considered to be a vineyard. It's considered to be a individual vine, whereby you only have to be marchik 6 tfachim. So it says over here that since you have to have 4 amos between each row, if you measured 6 tfachim per amma, you're going to come out with a kula, because you can still have what's considered to be a individual type of vine, because it's not yet arba amos. It's going to be less than the arba amos. So the arba amos as 6 tfachim each will be a larger space. So here we have lekula. Answers the Gemara Disnan. Kerem hanatua. Oh, the Gemara is still asking this question. Disnan. Kerem hanatua al palchas me arba amos. And it states in the Mishnah that if you have a kerem that's planted within arba amos, Rabbi Shimon Omer eno kerem, it's not considered to be a kerem. And again, we said if it's not a kerem, it's an individual vine, whereby you only have to be marchik 6 tfachim. So it'll come out to be a kula. V'chacham oimim keren, roin es ha'em sois ki ilu einom. Whereas the chachamim say it still is a kerem. We look at those parts of the vines that will ultimately be uprooted because they're not going to help the vines grow. So that'll give us a space in between the rows. So the Gemara is left with a question. If you're going to tell me that we're counting each amma, according to each amma 6 tfachim, then it will be a kula, because it'll give you more space between the rows. Answers the Gemara, ki Rabbanon da'amrei havei kerem. This is not like the shit of Rabbi Shimon, but rather like the Rabbanon. And therefore they do say it's a kerem. So it's not going to be an issue of measuring the arba amos. Or alternatively, you can say it's like Rabbi Shimon indeed, who says that it's not going to be a kerem. We asked it's lakula. V'roiv amos ka'amar. That which is said that Rav Abai said in the name of Nachman, we're counting and measuring each amma 6 tfachim in regards to the kilayim. We're going lechumra from 2 out of the 3 measurements in regards to the 2 measurements that we mentioned before. The measurement of karachas and the measurement of mechol. That's lechumra. When you measure a bigger space, then it's going to be a bigger chumra, because that will require that you have to be marchik, you have to have bigger space to have the shir choshev to be able to plant, so it's not kilayim. But that which we just said now, in regards to the last case of having space in between the rows, you're right, that'll come out lekula when we count each amma 6 tfachim as a measurement.